Hello, my name is Joshua Shaddox. This is Liberty University's History US 512, The American Revolution, discussion board post number 2. Today's topic is women in the Revolutionary Era, and I decided to pick Flora MacDonald. I selected Flora because I'd never heard of her until last week when I read B.J. Ramage's article about her. I am familiar with European history, especially English history, having studied it up through Elizabeth I, and who ended in 1603. And so I wanted to find out a little bit more about this period, and she intrigued me of all the names that were available. The Stuarts were the kings, or the line of kings, the ruling family that had the throne up until 1688, in what was called the Glorious Revolution, when they were invited to leave the throne of England and they fled. And so they served, or they didn't serve, they had a pretender status, if you were. They were the monarchs by name, but they didn't actually rule the kingdom. And in 1714, the old pretender attempted to retake the throne and he failed. Then his grandson, several years later, who we call the young pretender, Charles Edward Stuart, he attempted to take the throne in 1745. However, after some initial success in the north and the Scottish Highlanders helping him out, Bonnie Prince Charlie, as he's affectionately called, was completely routed, and he went into hiding. And that's where we meet dear Flora. Here's a picture, a portrait of what she looks like. And she was a young 22-year-old gal at the time. She was betrothed to a man, a MacDonald, and she was going to visit her brother and found out that he needed to escape. She met Prince Charles, and she agreed to help him escape back to England. They dressed him up as a woman, and she got a pass from her stepfather, who was actually the head of the militia, who was looking for the Stuart, the young pretender. And but she was able to smuggle him over to a place called Skye, where he caught a boat, and then eventually got out of there and got back to France. It's funny because they dressed him up as a female named Betty Burke, and he got away, but yet nobody kept their mouth shut about the rescue, and so then she got arrested. So she went into prison. She got detained for a couple of years, and different histories are a little um, unclear about where she actually went or how long she actually stayed. But she was eventually released, and I believe it's mainly because they were trying to quell rebellions and trying to soften the blow and stuff like that. And she didn't really have anything worth putting her to death over. So they let her go, and that's really all we knew of her for a while. The next several decades were kind of boring. She got married and had a bunch of kids, and life didn't go so well. So in 1774, they began the immigration process. They left Scotland and came to America. Well, many Highlanders had already moved to America, and they chose North Carolina. They settled inland, and they set up towns and villages and lands inland. A place called, or what is now called Fayetteville, is where she and her family settled. And it's interesting because, according to the accounts that I have on her, she basically, or her family basically, arrived in Fayetteville in April of 1775. And as we know, there was another glorious cause going on that began in April of 1775 with the shot heard around the world. And of course, they arrived in America with the onset of the Revolutionary War. And so, having been two-time losers against the English, it sounds like the Highlanders weren't really concerned or interested in backing another failing cause as they seen it. And so, at the request of the North Carolinian governor, the Highlanders raised a regiment, and MacDonald, her husband, was actually a commissioned officer in that regiment, as also what her son was. They did fight. Their very first battle was at Moores Creek, the Battle of Moores Creek, and they handily lost that battle and were taken prisoners. And they spent several years in prison camp waiting for a prisoner exchange before they were released. And so, poor Flora, her legacy is to have picked the losing side three times in history, and unfortunately, they lost everything because of it. So, interesting story. It was really neat to look into it, and I look forward to hearing your responses. Take care.